over the last 5 years, I've been working very closely with client after client after client in breakup situations with someone often who was avoidant. They were one way at the beginning of a relationship and then they were another way. And my client may have found themselves trying to get them back, trying to understand them, trying to decode them, because they were so loving and attentive at the beginning and then they changed and they pulled back. And, the client then feels anxious and unsure and starts questioning themselves. And then very often the avoidant just disappears and they shut down and then they're in no contact. And this is often when people contact me, when they are absolutely just devastated that somebody has done this. I can so relate to this. I've been in this situation many times before in the past. I know how disorientating it is. I know how confusing it is. And I know how easy it is for you to blame yourself. And I also know, and I really know this, that more often than not, they do come back. And it's kind of even to the point where I think, well, yeah, of course they're going to come back. They're going to come back and they're going to say something at some point. I very rarely doubt that. I very rarely actually doubt that the avoidant will come back and say something at some point, because I've seen it so many times that they do this. But my work that I do with people is more about how do we navigate this and how do we find your self-worth so that you do not have to put up with this situation ever again, and so that you know what to do when the red flags occur. So why then do they come back? Why do they leave if they're just going to come back and kind of try and, get themselves back into your life in some way? The thing is that with avoidance, they get hijacked by this fear that makes them act in a way that doesn't work in a relationship. They start feeling defensive. They don't like constructive criticism. They find these, difficult conversations where you're vulnerable, where you take responsibility and accountability, which is the hardest thing to do in a healthy relationship. They find those conversations very, very difficult. And very often people who have attracted an avoidant also have their own unhealed stuff. So both people can't help but trigger each other in the beginning. And in an ideal world, you'd both be on the same page about knowing that there's something going on within each of you that's triggering the other, and you both want to heal it and you both want to take responsibility for your side of the street. The anxious person is more likely to want to do that. They're also more likely to overgive, overlove, overcompensate, fill in the gaps, try and explain to the avoidant, because the avoidant is less likely to think that they are a problem and to think that there is a problem, because it means accountability. So when this inevitably occurs in a relationship with an avoidant, they start to feel overwhelmed and hijacked, and this is why they then can shut down. This is why they can become defensive. This is why they can pull back. This is why you feel like you're chasing them. This is why you feel like you're trying to get back the status quo of, how it was before, because they've given you something, a way that they could be when they felt safe, because maybe commitment wasn't so necessary in the beginning. Maybe it was kind of talked about, but maybe only 2 or 3 months in, it's really not, we're not quite there yet in reality, but they act like it is because they feel safe. But when it starts to actually become a thing, they start to feel like I say, really overwhelmed, and this is when they're going to shut down, and this is when they're going to start to pull back. So if you then go into a situation of no contact, they then for a while can go, oh gosh, what a relief. They might not even think that consciously, but they're going to be like, okay, now I can just, blah, 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 not think about this, and I'm going to go and do something else. They do all the distracting, avoiding. They do what avoidants do, which is avoid. And they kind of bury the emotions that they simply don't have the capacity to feel. They haven't been taught to sit with discomfort, so therefore they can't sit with yours, and that's why they run, right? So when this happens, they're going to do what they can to distract themselves, and that will reduce their anxiety and their stress over time. They're trying to dodge the feeling of rejection. They thought you were rejecting them. They think that they're not good enough for you. This is the backwards thing, because you end up feeling like you're not good enough for them, which is not the case at all. You're the catch. You're the catch, right? If you're watching this video, you're probably watching it because you poured everything into the avoidant. You poured everything into trying to make it work. You were a willing participant in a relationship. You were there. You saw them. You loved them. You wanted to be that safe person, and you were. And then the difficult thing is that you felt like you weren't, because they didn't like the discomfort of the honesty that is required to be in a long-term relationship that grows in closeness rather than, takes the closeness away, which is what happens with avoidance. Is it starts out really, really, really close, and then something happens, and like an argument or something, and rather than that actually like bringing you closer, it actually knocks the relationship because they can't repair it. They really struggle with rupture and repair, which is the sort of staple of a healthy relationship, where you can have a disagreement, you can have differences, but then you can have the healthy conflict afterwards. That is what we need, and they really struggle with that. So when this happens, they're in this situation where they're avoiding, they're distracting, their anxiety's gone down, and they start feeling better. They might even start distracting themselves with dating apps or whatever, which is probably the worst nightmare for many of you. You don't want to think about that. But remember that if they're avoidant with you, they're going to be avoidant with everybody. And even if they meet someone else who matches them where they're at with their avoidance level, that's not going to be a deep connected relationship, is it? Two avoidants together doesn't equal a deep connected relationship. And an avoidant with another very anxious, vulnerable person is going to have the same experience as you. So who cares if they're going on dating apps? They're not going to get far unless they actually do the work on themselves, right? So when this happens, they go through the cycle again of like, oh, I'm going to run away, and then I'm going to distract myself, and then I'm just going to start feeling lonely, and then I'm going to start kind of thinking about what I can do about it. And this might be when they contact you, but if it's not, they might, decide to go on dating apps and distract themselves that way for a while. That then doesn't work. That crashes and burns. And then they think, what's going on? Maybe I should now that there's no threat, no fear, no potential of connection or commitment involved, maybe I can contact that person. We did have quite a good connection. They start seeing you as like this brilliant, lovely person that they once had in their life, and they start seeing you in the way that, it is a more positive way, because there's no threat, basically. So their anxiety's gone down. This is when they can kind of go, hey, how's it going? Or they can say, oh, I saw this thing that reminded me of you. Or they could send you a meme. Or they could send something that's completely like, you've been struggling and crying and missing them, and they just send you a meme. Sometimes it's so annoying because it feels really like they don't get it. They don't see the pain that you've been going through, and they can kind of like jump in with a kind of like light-hearted thing when it's been really hard for you. You on the receiving end of this might think, what do I say to that? If I reply to that, am I gaslighting myself? And it's a good question, because if they send you something that's so light-hearted like that, have they done the work? This is what you need to find out. And the sooner you find out, the better, because, just be straight up. Like, if you want to know, don't tiptoe around it. Ask them. Like, where are you at now? What's been happening? Like, have you done any therapy? Have you been... Just straight up. You need the answers. Because if they say no, or they dodge the question, is it really worth engaging in this conversation with them? Because what often happens when an avoidant comes back is everybody tiptoes around it. Oh, I need to make sure that I don't say anything that makes them want to go away. Actually, one of my clients was saying this the other day. I need to plan it to make sure that I don't say anything that makes them want to leave. Just remember, everyone, you are not responsible for this person having left. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that they didn't have the capacity to stay through discomfort, right? You are not responsible for them not being able to stay present when things are uncomfortable. That's not on you. Let them do that. Let them shut down. That's just showing you more about who they are. Okay, you don't want that in the long run. The other reason why an avoidant can come back, and why they sometimes do, but it's much less common, is because they've actually reflected, and they actually want to say sorry. They actually want to admit to what they've done. This is part of the way there, but obviously saying sorry to a glass after you've smashed it does absolutely nothing. It would take a lot of work to repair the damage, wouldn't it? So saying sorry is good. At least they can say sorry. And sometimes an avoidant will come back in and they'll be like, I can't believe I treated you like that. And they'll say all the right things. But the real clue about, if an avoidant is worth talking to is, how do you feel? Like, how do you actually feel? Are you feeling safe with this person's new energy, or is it the same energy masked with nice words? Okay, because your nervous system is going to be very hypervigilant to this person, and it will be stressful if they come back because you will be nervous about getting hurt again. So unless their energy has drastically changed and you start to feel safe around them consistently because of how they're showing up, not what they're saying, then, this is the other scenarios that they've actually done the work, they've been to therapy, they've been consistent with it, and then they want to say, we should really try again. Often these situations happen very organically without a big, dramatic arrival into your life again. And I'm so sorry, and I'm at your front door with flowers and this massive apology. I mean, I would just get rid of the fantasy that that's going to happen. Like, delete it. It was from some kind of movie that you watched where you thought that might be a likely thing to happen. I did the same thing. I used to imagine like my ex, like I was Juliet on a balcony and he was just at my at the door going, I need to see you. And I stayed in that fantasy for such a long time, and that's really, really not what happened. It happened, like if you reconnect organically, it's much more organic and natural, and just life puts you in each other's way again, rather than it being a big dramatic apology. It would be nice and very validating, but the point is you've really got to validate yourself. My work with you now, from this point of understanding, yes, they can come back, yes, they can say all the right things, but what we have got to do is we have got to, and you have got to find it in you to know what you want, know what your values are, know what you're going to stand for, know what is an absolute hell no and what is a hell yes. And if it isn't a hell yes, then it is a hell no. So you can make a list of those two things if you want. That can be helpful. This work is like so important. It will change your life. You have got all these beliefs, all these ways of being, all these ways of thinking and feeling that have impacted your whole life because of how you've been brought up and what you've believed and thought about yourself and love, right? And some of them are beneficial and some of them are really not. And we've got to weed out the ones that are not. Okay, and this is what I do with my clients. This is what I do in my one-to-one. This is what I do in my group coaching. It's great in group coaching because you also get the benefit of seeing other people's belief systems, and then you realize, oh shit, I had the same one. So that's really useful. I've got my Heartbreak Healers Club, got my one-to-one, which is good if you really want that really focused attention. And then I've also got my 30-day X Recovery Challenge. So all of these things that are so important to work on yourself, for if the inevitable thing is that they probably will come back at some point, don't even worry about it, honestly. If they're avoidant, at some point they're going to poke their head into your life again. I can say that with quite a lot of confidence. I know that lots of you have the experience of like, no, they haven't, it's been years. Still, honestly, I've seen it where years later they come back. I'm genuinely not even worried about that. I'm more worried about your reaction to it. I'm more worried about how you will respond, because it is so hard when you haven't done the work on yourself not to be sucked back into the same toxic loop of doom. Okay, so it's so important that in this time where you're not talking to this person and you're in no contact, that you do actually work on yourself. Let's do it. Come with me on one of my programs. Let's do the Heartbreak Healers Club. Let's do one-to-one. Let's do the 30-day X Recovery Detox Challenge. I think I've said it in the right order. Let's do it. It's going to be awesome. And you are great. You are already great. It's not going to be great. You are already great. So all is well. And you're doing amazing. If nobody's told you this today, you're doing amazing. I know this is really difficult going through this, but you're doing amazing and everything is okay. So I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like any more information about what I do, you can find out everything in the link below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.